Welcome back, friends. Thank you for stopping by. This is a Lone Star Ranger series. Book 1, The Outlaw, by Zane Grey. Let's see what's at the end of this dusty trail. Saddle up. Let's ride. How long Dwayne was traveling out of that region he never knew, but he reached familiar country and found a rancher who had before befriended him. Here his arm was attended to, he had food and sleep, and in a couple of weeks he was himself again. When the time came for Dwayne to ride away on this endless trail, his friend reluctantly imparted the information that some 30 miles south, near the village of Shirley, there was posted a certain crossroad, a sign for a reward for Buck Dwayne, dead or alive. Dwayne had heard of such notices, but he'd never seen one. His friend's reluctance and refusal to state for what particular deed this reward was offered for, but it roused his curiosity. He'd never been any closer to Shirley than this rancher's home. Doubtless some post office burglary, some gun-shooting scrape he had attributed to him, but he'd been accused of worse deeds. Abruptly, Dwayne decided to ride over there and find out who wanted him, dead or alive, and why. As he started south on the road, he reflected that this was the first time he'd ever deliberately hunted trouble. Introspection awarded him this knowledge during the last terrible flight on the lower Nueces, and while he lay abed recuperating, he had changed. A fixed, immutable, hopeless bitterness abided within him. He had reached the end of his rope. All the power of his mind and soul were unavailable to turn him back from his fate. The fate was to become an outlaw in every sense of the term, to be what was credited with him being, that is to say, to embrace evil. He had never committed a crime. He wondered now, was crime close to him? He reasoned finally that desperation of crime had been forced upon him, if not its motive, and if driven, there was no limit to the possibilities. He understood now that many of the hereto inexplicable actions of certain noted outlaws, why they had returned to the scene of the crime, that they had outlawed them, why they took such strange, fatal chances, why life was no more to them than a breath of wind, why they rode straight into the jaws of death to confront wronged men, or hunted rangers or vigilantes to laugh in their very faces. It was such bitterness as this that drove these men. Toward the afternoon, from the top of a long hill, Dwayne saw the green fields and trees and shining roofs of the town he considered must be Shirley. And at the bottom of the hill he came upon an intersecting road. There was a placard nailed on the crossroad signpost. Dwayne drew the rein near in and leaned close to read the faded print. $1,000 reward for Buck Dwayne, dead or alive. Peering closer to read the finer, more faded print, Dwayne learned that he was wanted for a murder of a Miss Jeff Aiken at her ranch in Shirley. The month of September was named, but the date was illegible. The reward was offered by the woman's husband, whose name appeared with that of a sheriff's at the bottom of the placard. Dwayne read this thing twice. When he straightened, he was sick with horror of his fate, wild with passion at those misguided fools who could believe that he'd harm a woman. Then he remembered Kate Bland, and as always when she returned to him, she quaked inwardly. Years before, word had gone abroad that he had killed her, and so it was easy for men wanting to fix a crime to name him. Perhaps it had been done often. Probably he bore on his shoulders a burden of numberless crimes. A dark, passionate fury possessed him. It shook him like a storm shakes an oak. When it passed, leaving him cold, with clouded brow and piercing eye, his mind was set. Spurring his horse, he rode straight toward the village. Shirley appeared to be a large, pretentious country town. A branch of some railroad terminated there. The main street was wide, bordered by trees and commodious houses. Many of the stores were of brick. A large plaza shaded by giant cottonwood trees occupied a central location. Dwayne pulled his running horse and halted him, plunging and snorting before a group of idle men who lounged on benches in the shade of a spreading cottonwood. How many times had Dwayne seen just that kind of lazy shirt-sleeve Texas group? Not often, however. He'd seen such placid, lolling, good-natured men change their expression, their attitude, very swiftly. His advent apparently was momentous. They evidently took him for an unusual visitor. So far as Dwayne could tell, not one of them recognized him, had a hint of his identity. He slid off his horse and threw the bridle. "I'm Buck Dwayne," he said. "I saw that placard out there in the signpost. It's a damn lie. Somebody find me this Chief Aiken. I want to see him." His announcement was taken in absolute silence. That was the only effect he noted, for he avoided looking at the villagers. The reason was simple enough. Dwayne felt himself overcome with emotion. There were tears in his eyes. He sat down on the bench, put his elbows on his knees and his hands to his face. For once he had absolutely no concern for his face. This indignity was the last straw. Presently, however, he became aware of some kind of commotion among the villagers. He heard whisperings, low, hoarse voices, and then the shuffle of rapid feet moving away. All at once, a violent hand jerked his gun from his holster. When Dwayne rose, a gaunt man, livid of face, shaking like a leaf, confronted him with his own gun. "Hands up there, Buck Dwayne," he roared, waving the gun. That appeared to be the cue for pandemonium to break loose. Dwayne opened his lips to speak, but if he had yelled at the top of his lungs, he could not have made himself heard. In weary disgust, he looked at the gaunt man and then at the others who were working themselves into a frenzy. He made no move, however, to hold up his hands. The villagers surrounded him, emboldened by finding him now unarmed. Then several men laid hold of his arms and pinioned them behind his back. Resistance was useless, even if Dwayne had the spirit. Some of them fetched his halter from his saddle, and with this they bound him helpless. People were running now from the street, the stores, the houses. Old men, cowboys, clerks, boys, ranchers came on to trot. The crowd grew. The increasing clamor began to attract women as well as men. A group of girls ran up and then hung back in frightened pity. The presence of cowboys made a difference. They split up the crowd, got Dwayne, and lay hold of him with rough, businesslike hands. One of them lifted his fists and roared at a frenzied mob to fall back, to stop the racket. He beat them back into a circle, but it was some little time before the hubbub quieted down so the voice could be heard. "Shut up, will y'all?" he was yelling. "Give us a chance to hear something. Easy now, Soho. There ain't nobody gonna be hurt. That's right. Everybody quiet now. Let's see what's come off here." This cowboy, evidently one of authority, or at least one of strong personality, turned to the gaunt man who still waved Dwayne's gun. "Abe, put that gun down," he said. "Might go off. Here, give it to me. Now, what's wrong? Who's this rope gent, and what's he done?" The gaunt fellow, who appeared now to collapse, lifted a shaking hand and pointed to the fellow. He's Buck Dwayne," he panted. An angry murmur ran through the surrounding crowd. The rope, throw it over a branch, string him up," cried an excited villager. Buck Dwayne, hang him." The cowboy silenced these cries. "Abe, how do you know this fellow's Buck Dwayne?" he asked sharply. "Why, he said so," replied the man called Abe. "What?" The exclamation incredulously. "It's a tarnal fact," panted Abe, waving his hands importantly. He was an old man and appeared to be carried away with the significance of his deed. "He liked to rid his hoss over us all. Then he jumped off, says he's Buck Dwayne. He wanted to see Jeff Aiken bad." This speech caused a second commotion, as noisy though not enduring as the first. When the cowboy, assisted by a couple of his mates, had restored order again, someone had slipped the noose end of Dwayne's rope over his head. "Up with him," screeched the wild-eyed youth. The mob surged closer, was shoved back by the cowboys. "Abe, if you ain't drunk or crazy, tell that over, ordered Abe's interlocutor. With some show of resentment and more dignity, Abe reiterated his former statement. If he's Buck Duane, how the hell did you get a hold of his gun? Bluntly queried the cowboy. Why, he sat down there and kind of hid his face in his hands, and I grabbed his gun and got the drop on him. What the cowboy thought of this, he expressed in a laugh. His mates likewise grinned broadly, and then the leader turned to Duane. Stranger, I reckon you better speak up for yourself, he said. That stilled the crowd as no command had done before. I'm Buck Duane, all right, said Duane quietly. It was this way. The big cowboy seemed to vibrate with shock. All the ruddy warmth left his face, his jaw began to bulge. The corded veins in his neck stood out like knots. In an instant he had hard, stern, strange look. He shot out a powerful hand that fastened in front of Duane's blouse. Something queer here, but if you're Duane, you're sure in bad. Any fool ought to know that. You mean it then? Yes. Rode in to shoot up the town, eh? Some old stunt of you gunfires meant to kill the man who offered a reward? Wanted to see Jeff Aiken bad enough? No, replied Duane. Your citizen here misrepresented things. Seems a little off his head. Reckon he is. Somebody is, that's sure. You claim Buck Duane, then, and all his doings? I'm Duane, yes, but I won't stand for the blame of things I never did. That's why I'm here. I saw that placard out there offering a reward. Until now, I never was within half a day's ride of this town. I'm blamed for what I never did. I rode in here, told you who I was, and asked somebody to send for Jeff Aiken. And then you sat down and let this old guy throw your own gun on you, queried the cowboy in amazement. I guess that's it, replied Duane. Well, it's powerful strange if you're really Buck Duane. The man elbowed his way into the circle. It's Duane. I recognize him. I've seen him in more than one place, he said. Siebert, you can rely on that, what I tell you. I don't know if he's locoed or what, but I do know he's a genuine Buck Duane. Any one of you'd ever seen him on would never forget him. What do you want to see Aiken for? Asked Cowboy Siebert. I want to face him and tell him I never harmed his wife. Why? Because I'm innocent. I'm duly innocent. That's all. Suppose we send for Aiken and he hears you and doesn't believe you. What then? If he won't believe me, why then my case bad. I'd be better off dead. Momentary silence was broken by Siebert. This ain't a queer deal, boys. Reckon we better send for Jeff. Somebody went for him, and he'll be coming soon, replied a man. Duane stood a head taller than the circle of curious faces. He gazed out above and beyond him. It was in this way he chanced to see a number of women on the outskirts of the crowd. Some were old, with hard faces like the men. Some were young and comely. And most of these seemed agitated by excitement or distress. They cast fearful, pitying glances upon Duane and stood there with that noose round his neck. Women were more human than men, Duane thought. He met eyes that dilated, seemed fascinated at his gaze, but were not averted. It was the old women who were voluble, loud expression of their feelings. Near the trunk of the cottonwood stood a slender woman in white. Duane's wandering glance rested upon her. Her eyes were riveted upon him, a soft-hearted woman, probably, who did not want to see him hanged. Here comes Jeff Aiken now, called out a man loudly. The crowd shifted and trampled in eagerness. Duane saw two men coming fast, one of whom in the lead was a stalwart build. He had a gun in his hand, and his manner was that of fierce energy. The cowboy Siebert thrust open the jostling circle of men. Hold on, Jeff, he called, and blocked the man with the gun. He spoke so low Duane could not hear what he said, and his form hid Aiken's face. At the juncture, the crowd spread out, closed in, and Aiken and Siebert were caught in a circle. There was pushing forward, a pressing of many bodies, hoarse cries and flinging hands, again an insult tumult, and was about to break out. The demand for the outlaw's blood, the call for wild justice, executed 1,000 times before on Texas' bloody soil. Siebert bellowed at the dark encroaching mass, the cowboys with him beat and cuffed in vain. "Jeff, will you listen?" broke in Siebert hurriedly, his hand on the other man's arm. Aiken nodded coolly. Duane, who had seen many men in perfect control of themselves under circumstances like these, recognized the spirit that dominated Aiken. He was white, cold, passionless. There were lines of bitter grief deep round his lips. If Duane ever felt the meaning of death, you felt it then. "Sure this is your game, Aiken," said Siebert. "But hear me for a minute. Reckon there's no doubt about this man being Buck Duane. He's seen the placard out in the crossroads. He rides into Shirley. He says he's Buck Duane. He's looking for Jeff Aiken. That's clear enough. You know how these gunfighters go looking for trouble, but this one stumps me. Duane sits down here on the bench and lets old Strickland grab his gun and get the drop on him. More than that, he gives me some strange talk about how if you couldn't make you believe he's innocent, he's better off dead. You see for yourself, Duane ain't drunk or crazy or locoed. He doesn't strike me as a man who rode in here hunting blood, so I reckon you better hold on till you hear what he's got to say." Then for the first time, the drawn-faced, hungry-eyed giant turned his gaze upon Duane. He had intelligence which was not yet subservient to passion. Moreover, he seemed the kind of man Duane could care to have judge him in a critical moment like this. "Listen," said Duane gravely, with his eyes steady on Aiken's. "I'm Buck Duane. I never lied to any man in my life. I was forced into outlawry, and I have never had a chance to leave the country. I've killed men to save my own life. I never intentionally harmed a woman. I rode 30 miles today deliberately to see what this reward was, who made it, and what for. When I read the placard, I went sick to the bottom of my soul, so I rode in here to find you, to tell you this. I never saw Shirley before today, and it was impossible for me to have killed your wife. Last September, I was 200 miles north of here on the upper Nueces. I can prove that. Men who know me will tell you I couldn't murder a woman. I haven't any idea why such a deed should be laid at my hands. It's just wild border gossip. I have no idea what reasons you have for holding me responsible. I only know you're wrong. You've been deceived, and see here, Aiken, you understand I'm a miserable man. I'm about broken, I guess. I don't care anymore for life or anything. If you can't look me in the eyes man to man and believe what I say, why, by God, you can kill me." Aiken heaved a great breath. "Buck Duane, whether I'm impressed or not by what you're saying needn't matter. You have accuser, justly or unjustly, as soon will appear. The thing is, we can prove you're innocent or guilty. My girl Lucy saw my wife's assailant." He motioned for the crowd of men to open up. "Somebody, you, Siebert, go for Lucy. That'll settle this thing." Duane heard as a man in an ugly dream. The faces around him, the hum of voices, all seemed far off. Life hung by the nearest of thread. Yet he did not think of that so much, of the brand of a woman murderer which might be soon sealed upon him by a frightened, imaginative child. The crowd trooped apart and closed in again. Duane caught a blurred image of a slight girl clinging to Siebert's hand. He could not see distinctly. Aiken lifted the child and whispered soothingly to her not to be afraid. Then he fetched her closer to Duane. "Lucy, tell me, did you see this man before?" asked Aiken, huskily and low. "Is he the one who came into the house that day and struck you down and dragged Mama?" Aiken's voice failed. A lightning flash seemed to clear Duane's blurred sight. He saw a pale, sad face and violet eyes fixed in gloom and horror upon his. No terrible moment in Duane's life had ever equaled this one, a silence of suspense. "It ain't him," cried the child. Then Siebert was flinging the noose off of Duane's neck and unwinding the bonds round his arm. The spellbound crowd awoke to hoarse exclamations. "See there, my loco gents, how easy you'd hang the wrong man," burst out one cowboy, as he made the rope end hiss. "Y'all, a lot of wise rangers. Huh!" He freed Duane and thrust the bone-handled gun back into Duane's holster. "You, Abe there, reckon you pulled a stunt, but don't try like again. And men, I'll gamble there's a hell of a lot of bad work Buck Dwayne's named for, which he ain't never done. Clear away there. Where's his hoss? Dwayne, the road's open out of Shirley. Siebert swept the gaping watchers aside and pressed Dwayne toward the horse, which another cowboy held. Mechanically, Dwayne mounted, felt as he was lifted up, and then the cowboy's hard face softened in a smile. I reckon it ain't uncivil of me to say, hit that road quick, he said quite frankly. He led the horse out of the crowd. Aiken joined him, and between them they escorted Dwayne across the plaza. The crowd appeared irresistibly drawn to follow. Aiken paused with his big hand on Dwayne's knee. In it, unconsciously probably, he still held the gun. Dwayne, a word with you, he said. I believe you're not so black as you've been painted. I wish there was time to say more. Tell me this anyway. Do you know the Ranger Cap McNeely? I do not, replied Dwayne in surprise. I met him only a week ago in Fairfield, went on Aiken hurriedly. He declared you never killed my wife. I didn't believe him. I argued with him. We almost had words over it now. I'm sorry, that's the last thing he said was, if you ever see Dwayne, don't kill him. Send him into my camp after dark. He meant something strange. What? I can't say. But he was right, and I was wrong. If Lucy had batted an eye, I'd have killed you. Still, I wouldn't advise you to hunt up on McNeely's camp. He's clever. Maybe he believes there's no treachery in his new ideas of ranger tactics. I tell you for all it's worth. Goodbye. May God help you further as he did this day. Dwayne said goodbye and touched the horse with his spurs. So long, Buck, called Siebert, with that frank smile breaking warm over his brown face, and he held his sombrero high. When Dwayne reached the crossing of the roads named Fairfield on the signpost seemed to be the same thing that tipped the oscillating balance of decision in favor of that direction. He answered here to unfathomable impulse. He had been driven to hunt by Jeff Aiken. Now he was called to find this unknown ranger captain. In Dwayne's state of mind, clear reasoning, common sense, or keenness were out of the question. He went because he felt he was compelled. Dusk had fallen when he rode into town, which inquiry discovered to be Fairfield. Captain McNeely's camp was stationed just out of the village limits on the other side. No one except the boy Dwayne questioned appeared to notice his arrival. Like Shirley, the town of Fairfield was large and prosperous compared to the innumerable hamlets dotting the vast extents of southwestern Texas. As Dwayne rode through, being careful to get off the main street, he heard tolling of a church bell, a melancholy reminder of his old home. There did not appear to be a camp on the outskirts of town, but as Dwayne sat his horse, peering around, undecided what further move to make, caught a glint of flickering lights through the darkness. Heading toward them, he rode perhaps a quarter of a mile to come upon a grove of mesquite. The brightness of several fires made the surrounding darkness all that blacker. Dwayne saw the moving forms of men and herd horses. He advanced naturally, expecting any moment to be halted. "Who goes there?" came a sharp call out of the gloom. Dwayne pulled his horse. The gloom was impenetrable. "One man, alone," replied Dwayne. "A stranger?" "Yes." "What do you want?" "Trying to find the ranger camp." "You struck it. What's your errand?" "I want to see Captain McNeely." "Get down, advance, slow. Don't move your hands. It's dark, but I can see." Dwayne dismounted, leading his horse slowly, advanced a few paces. He saw a dully bright object, a gun, before he discovered the man who even held it. A few more steps showed a dark figure blocking the trail. Here Dwayne halted. "Come closer, stranger. Let's have a look at you," the guard ordered curtly. Dwayne advanced again until he stood before the man. Here the rays of light from the fires flickered upon Dwayne's face. "Reckon you're a stranger, all right. What's your name and what's your business with the captain?" Dwayne hesitated, pondering what was the best to say. "Tell Captain McNeely I'm the man he's been asking to ride in his camp after dark," finally said Dwayne. Ranger bent forward to peer hard at this night visitor. His manner had been alert, and now it became tense. Come here, one of you men, quick, he called without turning the least toward the campfire. Hello, what's up, Piggins? Came the swift reply, followed by a rapid thud of boots on soft ground. A dark form crossed the gleams of the firelight. Then a ranger loomed up to reach the side of the guard. Dwayne heard whispering, the purport of which he could not catch. The second ranger swore under his breath. Then he turned away and started back. Here, Ranger, before you go, understand this. My visit is peaceful, friendly, if you'll let it be. Mind, I was asked to come here. Dwayne's clear, penetrating voice carried far. The listening rangers at the campfire heard what he said. Ho, Pickens, tell that feller to wait, replied an authoritative voice. Then a slim figure detached itself from the dark, moving group at the campfire and hurried out. Better be foxy, Cap, shouted a ranger in warning. Shut up, all you, was the reply. This officer, obviously Captain McNally, soon joined the two rangers who was confronting Dwayne. He had no fear. He rode straight up to Dwayne. I'm McNally, he said. If you're my man, don't mention your name yet. All this seemed too strange to Dwayne, in keeping with that much that happened lately. I met Jeff Aiken today, said Dwayne. He sent me. You met Aiken? Exclaimed McNally, sharp, eager, and low. By all that's bully. Then he appeared to catch himself, to grow restrained. Men, fall back. Leave us alone for a minute. The ranger slowly withdrew. Buck Dwayne, it's you, he whispered eagerly. Yes. If I give my word you'll not be arrested, you'll be treated fairly. Will you come into my camp and consult with me? Certainly. Dwayne, I'm sure glad to meet you, went on McNally and extended his hand. Amazed and touched, scarcely realizing this actuality, Dwayne gave his hand and felt no unmistakable grip of warmth. Doesn't seem natural, Captain McNally, but I believe I'm glad to meet you, said Dwayne soberly. You will be. Now we'll go back to camp. Keep your identity mum for the present. He led Dwayne in the direction of the campfire. Pickers, go back on duty, he ordered, and Beeson, you look after his horse. When Dwayne got beyond the line of mesquite, which had hid a good view of the campsite, he saw a group of perhaps 15 rangers sitting around the fires near a long and low shed where the horses were feeding, and a small adobe house was off to one side. We just had grub, but I'll see you get some, then we'll talk. I've taken up temporary quarters here. Have a rustler job on hand. Now, when you've eaten, come right into the house. Dwayne was hungry, but he hurried through an ample supper that was set before him, urged on by curiosity and astonishment. The only way he could account for his presence there in the ranger camp was that McNeely hoped to get you some information out of him. Still, that would hardly have made the captain so eager. There was a mystery here, and Dwayne could scarcely wait for it to be solved. While eating, he had been seeing keen eyes all about him. After a first quiet scrutiny, the rangers apparently paid no more attention to him. They were all veterans in service. Dwayne saw that rugged, powerful men of iron constitution. Despite the occasional joke and a sally of more youthful members and a general conversation of campfire nature, Dwayne was not deceived about the fact that his advent had been unusual and a striking one, which had caused an undercurrent of conjecture and even consternation among them. These rangers were too well trained to appear openly curious about the captain's request. If they had not deliberately attempted to be oblivious of his presence, Dwayne could have concluded they thought him an ordinary visitor, somehow of use. As it was, Dwayne felt suspense that must have been due to the hint of his identity. He was not long in presenting himself at the door of the house. Come in, have a chair, said McNally, motioning for one of the other occupants in the room to rise. Leave us, Russell, and close the door. I'll go through these reports right off. McNally sat at a table upon which was a lamp and various papers. Seen in the light was a fine-looking soldiery man about 40 years, dark-haired, dark-eyed, with a bronzed face, shrewd, stern, strong, yet not wanting in kindliness. He seemed hastily scanning over some papers and fussed about with them and finally put them into envelopes. Without looking up, he pushed a cigar case toward Dwayne, and upon Dwayne's refusal to smoke, he took a cigar, rose to light it in the lamp chimney, and then, settling back in his chair, he faced Dwayne, making a vain attempt to hide what must have been the fulfillment of a long-nourished curiosity. "Dwayne, I've been hoping for this for 2 years, he began. Dwayne smiled a little bit. Smiled that felt strange on his face. He'd never been much of a talker. Speech here seemed more than ordinarily difficult. McNeely must have felt that. He looked long and earnestly at Dwayne, and his quick, nervous manner changed to thoughtfulness. "I've lots to say, but where to begin?" he mused. "Dwayne, you've had a hard life since you went on the dodge. I never met you before. Don't know what you look like it as a boy, but I can see well, even ranger life isn't all roses." He rolled his cigar between his lips and puffed out clouds of smoke. "Even here from home since you left Wellston?" he asked abruptly. "No. Never a word?" "Not one," replied Dwayne sadly. "That's tough. I'm glad to be able to tell you that up just lately your mother, sister, uncle, all your folks, I believe, were well. I've kept posted, but haven't heard lately." Dwayne averted his face in a moment, hesitated till the swelling left his throat, and he said, "It's worth what I went through today to hear that. I can imagine how you feel about it when I was in the war, but let's go down to discussing business of this meeting." Pulled his chair close to Dwayne's. "You've had word more than once in the last 2 years that I wanted to see you. 3 times that I remembered," replied Dwayne. "Why didn't you hunt me up? I suppose you imagined me one of those gunfighters who couldn't take a dare and expect me to ride up to your camp and get arrested." "That's natural, I suppose," went on McNelly. "You didn't know me, otherwise you would have come. I've been a long time getting to you, but the nature of my job, as far as it's concerned, made me cautious. Dwayne, you're aware of the hard name you bear all over the Southwest." "Once in a while I'm jarred into realizing that," replied Dwayne. "It's the hardest, bearing Morrell and Cheseldine on the Texas border, but there's a difference. Morrell in his day was known to deserve his infamous name. Cheseldine in his day also, but I found hundreds of men in the Southwest who are your friends, who swear you never committed a crime. The farther south I get, the clearer it becomes. What I want to know is the truth. Have you ever done anything criminal? Tell me the truth, Dwayne. It won't make a difference in my plan. And when I say crime, I mean what I would call a crime, or any reasonable Texan." "That my hands are clean," replied Dwayne. "You never held up a man, robbed a store for grub, stole a horse when you needed him bad, never anything like that." "Somehow I always kept out of that when pressed the hardest." "Dwayne, I'm glad," McNelly exclaimed, gripping Dwayne's hand. "Glad for your mother's sake, but all the same, in spite of this, you are a Texas outlaw, accountable to the state. You're perfectly aware of that. Under existing circumstances, if you fell into the hands of the law, you'd probably hang, at least go to jail for a long time." "That's what kept me on the dodge all these years," replied Dwayne. "Certainly." McNelly removed his cigar. His eyes narrowed and glittered. The muscles along his brown cheeks set hard and tense. He leaned closer to Dwayne, laid sinewy, pressing fingers on Dwayne's knee. "Listen to this," he whispered hoarsely. "If I place a pardon in your hand, make you free, honest citizen once more, clear your name of infamy, make your mother and your sister proud of you, will you swear yourself to a service, any service I demand of you?" Dwayne sat stock still, stunned. Slowly, more persuasively, with a show of earnest agitation, Cap McNelly reiterating his startling query. "My God," burst from Dwayne. "What is this, McNelly? You can't be earnest." "Never more so in my life. I have a deep game. I'm playing it square. What do you say?" He rose to his feet. "Dwayne, as if impelled, rose with him. Ranger and outlaw then locked eyes that searched each other's souls. In McNelly, Dwayne's read true, strong, fiery purpose, hope, even gladness, and a fugitive mounting assurance of victory. Twice Dwayne endeavored to speak, but failed, all save a hoarse, incoherent sound, until forcing back a flood of speech, he found a voice. "Any service?" "Every service. McNally, I give you my word," said Dwayne. A light played over McNally's face, warming all out of the grim darkness. He held out his hand. Dwayne met it with his clasp, and the men unconsciously gave in to the moments of stress. When they unclasped and Dwayne stepped back to drop back in his chair, McNally fumbled for another cigar. He had bitten the other one into shreds. And lighting it as before, he turned to the visitor, now calm and cool, and he had a look of a man who had just won something at considerable cost. His next move was to take a long leather case from his pocket and extract from it several folded papers. "Here's your pardon from the governor," he said quietly. "You'll see when you look it over that it's conditional. When you sign this paper, I have the condition, and it will be met." He smoothed out the paper, handed it to Dwayne and a pen, and ran his forefinger along the dotted line. Dwayne's hand was shaky. Years had passed since he held a pen. It was with difficulty that he achieved his signature. Buckley Dwayne, how strange that name looked. "Right here ends the career of Buck Dwayne, outlaw gunfighter," said McNally, and, seating himself, he took the pen from Dwayne's fingers and wrote several lines in the several places on the paper, and then with a smile he handed it to Dwayne. "That makes you a member of Company A, Texas Rangers." "So that's it?" burst out Dwayne, a lightning breaking in upon his bewilderment. "You want me for ranger service?" "Sure, that's it," replied Captain dryly. "Now to hear what that service is to be, I've been a busy man since I took this job, and as you might have heard, I've done a few things. I don't mind telling you that political influence put me in here, and that up Austin way, that's a good deal of friction in the Department of State. In regard to whether or not ranger service is any good, whether it should be discontinued or not, I'm on the party side who's defending the ranger service. I contend that it's made Texas habitable. Well, it's been up to me to produce the results. So far, I've been successful. My great ambition is to break up the outlaw gangs along the river. I've never ventured in there yet because I've been waiting to get the lieutenant I needed. You, of course, are the man that I had in mind. It's my idea to start way up the Rio Grande and begin with Cheseldine. He's the strongest, the worst outlaw of the times. He's more than a rustler, it's, in my opinion. His gangs are operating up and down the banks. They're doing bank robbing, and that's my private opinion, but it's not been backed up by any evidence. Cheseldine doesn't leave evidences. He's intelligent and cunning. No one seems to have seen him, to know what he looks like. I assume, of course, that you're a stranger to the country he dominates. 500 miles west of your ground, there's a little town over there called Fairdale. It's the nest of the rustler gang. They rustle and murder at will. Nobody knows who the leader is. I want you to find out. Well, whatever you decide, it's best you proceed to act upon it. You're your own boss. You know such men and how they're approached. You'll take all the time needed. If it's months, it'll be necessary for you to communicate with me, and that will be a difficult matter. For Cheseldine dominates several whole counties. You must find some way to let me know, and my rangers are needed and will come and help. The plan is to break up Cheseldine's gang. It's the toughest job on the border. Arresting him alone isn't to be heard of. He couldn't be brought out. Killing him isn't much better, for his select men, the ones he operates with, are as dangerous to the community as he is. We want to kill or jail this choice selection of robbers and break up the rest of the gang. To find them, to get among them somehow, to learn their movements, to lay your trap for us rangers to spring. That, Dwayne, is your service to me, and God knows it's a great one." "I've accepted it," replied Dwayne. "Your work will be secret. You're now ranger in my service, but no one except a few I choose to tell will know of it until we pull off the job. You'll simply be Buck Dwayne till it suits our purpose to acquaint Texas with the fact that you're a ranger. You'll see there's no date on that paper. No one will ever know just when you entered the service. Perhaps we can make it appear that all or most of your outlawry was really been a good service to the state. At that, I believe it'll turn out so." McNally paused for a moment in his rapid talk, chewed his cigar, and drew his brows together in a dark frown, and went on. "No man on the border knows so well as you the deadly nature of this service. It's 1,000 to 1 that you'll be killed. I'd say there was no chance at all for any other man but you. Your reputation will go far among the outlaws. Maybe that and your nerve and your gunplay will pull you through. I'm hoping so. But it's a long, long chance against you ever coming back." "That's not the point," said Dwayne. "But in case I get killed out there, what, "Leave that to me," interrupted Captain McNally. "Your folks will know at once of your part in your ranger duty. If you lose your life out there, I'll see your name cleared, the service you rendered known. You can rest assured of that." "I'm satisfied," replied Dwayne. "That's so much more than I dared to hope." "Well, it's settled then. I'll give you money for expenses. You'll start as soon as you like. The sooner the better. I hope to think of other suggestions, especially about communicating with me." Long after the lights are out and the low hum of voices had ceased round the campfire, Dwayne lay wide-eyed awake, eyes staring into the blackness, marveling over the strange events of that day. He was humbled, grateful to the depths of his soul. A huge and crushing burden had been lifted off his heart. He welcomed this hazardous service to the man who'd saved him. Thought of his mother and sister and Uncle Jim, of his home, of old friends come rushing over him the first time in years, the happiness and the memories. The disgrace he had put on them would now be removed, and in the light of that, his wasted life of the past and his probable tragic end in the future, service as atonement changed their aspects. And as he lay there with approach of sleep finally dimming the vividness of his thought, so full of mystery, shadowy faces floated in the blackness around him, haunting him as they always had haunted him. It was broad daylight when he awakened, and McNally was calling him to breakfast. Outside sounded the voices of men crackling the fires, snorting and stomping the horses and barking at dogs. Dwayne rolled out of his blankets and made good use of the soap and towel and razor and the brush that was nearby on the bench, things of rare luxury to an outlaw on the ride. The face he saw in the mirror was strange as the past he'd tried so hard to recall. Then he stepped to the door and went out. The rangers were eating in a circle round a tarpaulin spread upon the ground. "Fellas," said McNally, "shake hands with Buck Dwayne. He's on secret ranger service for me, service that'll make y'all hump soon. Mind you, keep mum about it." The rangers surprised Dwayne with a roaring greeting, the warmth of which he soon divined was divided between pride of his acquisition to their ranks and eagerness to meet that violent service of which their captain hinted. They were jolly wild fellows, with just enough gravity in their welcome to show Dwayne their respect and appreciation, while not forgetting his lone wolf record. When he had seated himself in that circle, now one of them, feeling subtle and uplifting, pervaded him. After the meal, Captain McNally drew Dwayne aside. "Here's the money. Make it go as far as you can. Better strike straight for El Paso. Snook around there and listen for things. Then go to Valentine. That's near the river, within 50 miles or so of the edge of the rim rock. Somewhere up there, Cheseldine holds a fort. Somewhere to the north is the town of Fairdale, but he doesn't hide all the time in the rocks, only after some daring raid or hold-up. Cheseldine's got border towns on his staff, and they're scared of 'em, and places we want to know about, especially Fairdale. Write me care of the adjutant at Austin. I don't have to warn you to be careful when you mail letters. Ride 200 miles if necessary, or go clear to El Paso." McNelly stopped with an air of finality, and Dwayne slowly rose. "I'll start at once," he said. Extend his hand to the captain. I wish... well, I'd like to thank you." "Hell, man, don't thank me," replied McNelly, crushing the proffered hand. "I've sent a lot of good men to their deaths, and maybe you're another. But, as I've said, you've one chance in 1,000, and by heaven, I'd hate to be Cheseldine or any other man you were trailing. No, not goodbye. Adios, Dwayne. May we meet again."